gosh, middle school and power tools. So that was one of those where you're thinking, well, is that something I really want to do? We built planter box benches and we built a bistro picnic table. This has been the most rewarding transition I've ever made.
Welcome back to Educator University. Sometimes as teachers, we want to change subjects, but we're not sure how to do it confidently. Today, I have a guest on who has done so recently and is going to share his tips for success. Joe, thanks for joining us.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
So you actually made a pretty big shift from social studies all the way to woodshop. Would you talk a little bit about when you started to think about making that shift and how did you know it was the right move for you?
I always just kind of connected to the shop setting was the way that I started out in school. I was just really good at that. And when I became a teacher, I was checking in with the woodshop teacher who, oddly enough, when I started here, was my woodshop teacher in high school. I always thought, middle school and woodshop, that's crazy. But as the program started to fade away when the woodshop teacher retired, I started thinking, man, it's something I'd be interested in, am I? And so I kind of second guessed that a little bit. And so I just started putting feelers out and started thinking, all right, well, is it something I could do? Is it something I'd want to do? And so that was kind of the shift that I made. And I think enough people kind of believed in what I was talking about that it made me think, all right, let's do it then. So from my admin down to just my friend group. So that was the catalyst for the whole thing.
Yeah, and kind of going along with that theme, do you have any suggestions in terms of what you did and how you brought that program back after it not being there and how you advocated for that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I went to my admin and said, hey, I'm thinking about doing this. And I think admin support's a huge thing. She was 100% behind it, especially with a bigger focus on the trades happening right now over, kind of the pathway to a 4-year college degree. I went to the admin and said, hey, I'm interested in this. I have the background in construction, and it was just something that I thought I could be passionate about. And I think I brought that in, and especially with an elective that I was doing that would, address something that was a void at that point. I kind of had the instant support, I guess I could say. I was able and willing to meet up with other groups of people. I went to similar content areas in wood shops in the schools around to see what they did and brought that back and said, hey, here's how these schools do it. And this is what I'm thinking, that I would either mirror that or, hey, I see it, but I would change it this way or that way. And so I think the more you can bring to the table as far as what your ideas might be, maybe the more support you'd get.
So you really did quite a bit of research before you talked to the administrators.
I did.
Yeah.
The way it went down is I actually took the entire school year prior to where I felt like I was going to make the switch, and I kind of knew that. And so during in-service and downtime, I think I met with 3 out of the 5 schools to meet with their teachers, look at their program, the tools that they had, the way that they did their classroom instruction, the way that they did their projects, and that whole thing. And then it took me a little bit of processing, how would I make this my own? And so that was the biggest thing that I did is the research behind the scenes.
It's kind of nice that you shared that, because if someone's wanting to bring up a class, having examples from other schools or other places is a great way to start.
It's one of those things where, in a lot of elective classes, because I've taught wheel classes of geography and things like that, where you can make your own curriculum and you have all these ideas because that's your, I'm a social studies teacher by license. And so that's your background and it's what you are passionate about. Having another piece of information or another idea that you can bring to the table, I think that that's a huge thing.
Yeah, and going along with that licensure idea, I'm kind of curious in terms of getting endorsements. Is it a test? How does it work for woodshop?
It's another part of the legwork that I did when I was researching this whole position is, do I need to take this? And based on my prior education, I was in the military for 6 years and I was a carpenter in the Navy. And so I thought, well, does that qualify me for this position? And do I need the licensure for that? And if I was going to become this industrial tech teacher in high school, then the process would be considerably different than it is for middle school. So I have been told that if I do want to do the industrial tech route, that I do need to take the praxis for it. But I've also thought, well, I'll choose that battle down the road if that's the route I want to go. Chasing down leads and advocating for myself is something that really helps out when you're dealing with the admin downtown and the bureaucracy of teaching.
Oh, yeah. And I'm sure you have a lot of experience with that with your teachers teaching and switching subjects.
Yeah, it was funny because when I first started teaching, language arts and social studies were blocked together. And when that shifted, it was a time, I think it was No Child Left Behind was the program in place at the time. And I ended up teaching language arts for almost 15 years just because the way that the staff seniority and the needs were there. As people started retiring, I was like getting social studies back. But it was, the shift is always there a little bit. You fluctuate maybe grades or fluctuate maybe, even just content area or knowledge that with shifting like standards and things like that.
So with these different shifts you've made, you've been able to take what you've learned from the subject you're teaching and bring it to your new subject. Could you share some of the skills in your latest shift from social studies to woodshop, the skills you've brought that you kind of thought, okay, I know what to do, even though it's a different subject?
Oh, absolutely. I think the biggest thing for me is planning and organization. I bring a lot to that to the table. And so shifting gears, I realized that a lot of what I try and do in my social studies classroom was group projects or have the kids bring their ideas to the table and share that with a group. If they're doing research on a country or if they're understanding how, a system of government works, I thought, okay, every kid in that group has a role. And when I applied that to woodworking, I'd say, okay, it's almost, that backwards planning thing where I need this end result, which is going to be the project they're going to create. And then what steps do I need to do that to get there? And so that was the process that I went through that I used in social studies a lot, that I use in woodshop now.
So in terms of making that shift and having those skills that you brought with you, I'm sure you had a lot of successes. Like I've mentioned, you've had a lot of great things happening, but maybe I had some challenges. I think that's the piece that a lot of teachers that are thinking about making a shift might feel afraid about, nervous about maybe what's going to happen if I get to this new subject. I don't know what I'm doing. What were some of the challenges that you saw? How did you manage those?
It's a tough question because when you stop and think about being nervous about a lack of success or what that looks like, if something doesn't go well, what's that going to look like? I think the biggest thing that I had that was maybe not successful is the time that it would take to have the kids pick up a skill from the classroom, bring it to the shop, and then have that translated into a project where what I thought would be plenty of time ended up maybe not being enough time at all. And so that was something that threw me a little bit where I thought, okay, it should take the kids this long, maybe 3 days, and it would end up taking 5 to 7 days. And I was like, whoa, and so where you think, okay, I have plenty of time to do this, and you actually run out of time. And I think that was one of the biggest things that I had as far as my growth would be, is where I'd reflect at the end of something and say, man, I really didn't put enough time into thinking how long it would take them to get that project done or get that skill on a machine or things like that. So yeah, definitely would be the timing of lessons in something that's new to you.
Yes, and I would have to totally agree with that because I also recently switched from language arts to foods classes, and I feel the same way. I didn't realize initially they needed 10 minutes to clean at the end of the class. I was like, oh, I'll just give them 5 minutes. That was not enough. So it's like almost doubling what you think you're going to need
Right.
sometimes in the class because you have 30 kids or whatever and it takes longer to get things put away. So yeah, I understand that pacing piece is always something that will be a challenge, but something you can overcome in as you learn and work together.
Oh,
So
absolutely. I guess once you establish the buy-in from the kids that are in the class, that they are into it more and will follow up a little bit more than the kids who are disconnected from something. And so that it does play a pretty big part in making sure that you're able to get that taken care of and get the kids to want to be a part of the class that you're in. So I think that was a huge thing that helped out down the road.
yeah, that ties in right into the next question is some of the highlights. I know you mentioned them having engagement and interest. What are some of the other highlights that you've seen moving from subjects and experiencing this new world of woodshop?
This has been the most rewarding transition I've ever made. It's funny, I just finished up my 25th year of teaching, and and it's I feel like a first year teacher in some ways, but I also feel like the accomplishments that I've got from the kids and the connection that I hear in the halls and things like that, that's been huge. This has been the most rewarding transition I've ever made. It's funny, I just finished up my 25th year of teaching, and it's I feel like a first year teacher in some ways, but I also feel like the accomplishments that I've got from the kids and the connection that I hear in the halls and things like that, that's been huge. Where the kids from one trimester will ask somebody else, "What are you guys working on right now?" And, "Oh, we built this and we did this." I was lucky enough last summer to team up with an organization called Team Oregon Build, and they basically provide sheltered assistance for disaster relief or transitional housing for the homeless. And one of the things as a middle school teacher, I knew I couldn't contribute to the level that high school would, but they have a support role. And so my kids, I taught them that if you pick up a skill that you could and should use that to better, your environment, your surroundings, your community. And so as a result, I used the last part of my trimester in each class to build projects for this organization or for a nonprofit that we could in turn donate with the skills that the kids picked up. And that's been great because the kids saw where it went. They knew that they were able to give something that they picked up in class and were able to build and watch it go to somebody in the community in need. That was a really cool, rewarding thing. And the kids from one trimester talked to the kids in another trimester about what they did. And I changed it up every trimester to support the needs of the community.
Wow, what a real life application. You don't get that in a lot of classes.
Oh, no, you don't. And so that leads me to, I guess, one other aspect of this is the networking that I've done outside of school that I didn't really ever do. I know a lot of teachers have had support through different websites and things like that where they're like, "Oh, I've got support in the way of supplementing my library for language arts classes and things like that," which I did when I was a language arts teacher. Networking in the industry of builders and lumber companies and things like that, it's been really cool to see they really want to be a part of getting this program going and supporting it. And so that's been unbelievably rewarding also to see what they do. They're like, "Hey, here's some discount on this lumber, or here's a discount on these tools." So my shop in return has some things that no other shop has, and that's a pretty neat thing. The kids kind of see that, wow, we have compound miter saws and no other school does, and so it's kind of a neat thing.
Yeah, having that connection with the community and seeing them support your program in such a physical way to give you those supplies and to have the students feel that support in a way that other classes just don't have. Thinking about maybe the bigger community of education, what advice would you have for teachers who are thinking about doing this and might feel a little bit nervous about this change, about actually taking the plunge?
Yeah, being nervous is absolutely understandable about it. And I think what I did was I had the list of kind of pros and cons, when you've been teaching and you make this list of, I guess, kind of reflecting on what you've done in the past and what's worked, what you like about what you're doing and what you would change. That's a huge thing. And I'd still say to this day that having an instructional mentor to bounce these ideas off of, no matter what they are, was a great thing. So it is really sad to me that those positions went away because it's not just a classroom planning support, data analysis thing. It's a conversation with people who have ideas and opposing questions and things that make you think. And so creating that pros and cons list is something that I did, pretty extensively, and then talking to my network of friends and colleagues and things like that. And the whole time it was something that I didn't really make public to anybody, but within the network of friends that you have that you teach with or you hang out with and say, "Oh, hey, I'm thinking about doing this." And it's so funny. It's the exact same thing that I got when I first started mentioning it. They're like, "Oh my gosh, middle school and power tools." And so that was one of those cons where you're thinking, is that something I really want to do? And that's where I bring the classroom experience. It's organization. It's making sure that they're scaffolding this information and being able to build it up and go from there where they're more sure of themselves. The pros and cons. And then my other thing is, what would happen if this program went away? When somebody's, I think, going to make that change or wants to make a change, was the program there in the first place? Is it something they're bringing in fresh? And And to me, I kept in touch with the woodshop teacher. I'd come down and visit about that and just what they were working on and things like that, and just always look around. And when the program went away and they took all the tools and put them in the back storage room and turned the woodshop into a language arts and social studies class, I thought, man, the kids are going to be missing out on a significant opportunity. And so if you are bringing something back, that was one of the biggest things is what would happen if this went away. And so a lot of times it maybe creates a little bit more passion in what you're going to do to bring that back. I'm going to make the best program, or I really want it to go this way. And thankfully, things kind of fell into place where I did have quite a bit of success and I did have a massive amount of support. And so obviously the pros, far exceeded the cons of, hey, what if I struggled in my transition of classroom teaching concepts to applying it to an actual machine. So there's the possibility of it, but at the same time, when you're bringing fresh set of eyes or this newfound excitement for a program, chances are it's going to take off. So that's one of the biggest things that I did, was just to make sure that made the list, talked about it with a lot of people, and then after checking with other people that are teaching the same thing at other schools, I thought, all right, I can apply what I've done and make it work, and it did take off.
Yeah, and that passion and vision that you had for the program itself kind of carried it as well. Like you said, you had such a vision for this program not ending because these students could really benefit from woodshop, from that hands-on experience. Before I go into some quick fun questions, is there any final advice you want to give to teachers who are thinking about transitioning that you haven't quite shared yet?
I think the only thing that I would say, because it made me stop and reflect about, was I done teaching social studies? No matter what time frame or however long you've been teaching, was I ready to leave that behind? I felt like I was. And so maybe some people are like, well, I still really want to do this, because I still have kids who I had in class who, as social studies, were like, do you miss social studies? And I was like, I kind of do, but at the same time, I was ready to make that change. And so it's a good question to ask is, are you ready to leave that behind? Are you going to miss it? And the reflection piece is a huge thing.
So asking yourself, are you really ready? Because maybe you're still attached. You still want to do that, especially if you have a lot of curriculum and experience. Maybe it's not the time today, but maybe in the future. It took you a year really to make this shift. So for some people thinking about it, it might take longer than afternoon. It might take weeks or even a year.
Yeah, I mean, and like I said, an entire school year is what I
Yeah.
dedicated to putting this process in order. And even the summertime isn't a great time, or even a great amount of time to do that. Where if you're thinking about it, start laying the foundation and putting this thing in place basically as early as possible, because that way you have both of your feet under you, and you're ready to take off from there, rather than piecing pieces together, because that would, to me, it would add to the uncertainty, where if the more prepared you can be and the more answers you can have, the better off you're going to be in your transition.
Also, I didn't mention this earlier, but you physically prepared your space too. It took a long time, I'm guessing, to get that space going from a language arts classroom back to a woodshop room and getting it all set up with the tools and things.
Yeah, and thankfully, in my life and in my stage of career, my kid's grown, didn't have anything going on, and so it took, I think I volunteered about 500 hours
Oh, wow.
of, yeah. And so I was at school every day, all day long, but that's not for everybody, obviously. And so at this stage I was able to do that. And but it was also a labor of love, where I could reflect at the end of the day and thought, okay, hey, this is amazing, it's really coming together. And so I put this plan together, and I'd made this humongous punch list of things to do, and did that. It's the time you want to dedicate to make the program, and some people are able to do that in the time allotted, and I just made sure that I did everything I wanted to do, and I didn't sacrifice it all to anything personal. I just did the things that I wanted to do, and it just kind of unfolded that way. But
And
yeah, it was definitely a lot of work, but I think that that's the control that I wanted in the space.
yes, and I can tell you your dedication has paid off, because I hear your name so much in my classroom. Mr. Watt did this and this and this, and we're doing this. And it's like I can just hear that excitement. And like you said, that program wouldn't be there without you, which requires a little more effort than if it had already existed before. So that really was like lifting something off the ground to get it going and
That was
moving.
awesome.
So
Thank you.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And you've made some incredible projects. You've made benches. Yeah,
Yeah, we
maybe you can share what they are exactly.
Yeah, well, through T Morgan Build, they supplied a pretty decent amount of lumber, which is the huge part of my budget. So having that really made it, because I thought, okay, well, they provide the materials, I provide the knowledge and the labor, and the kids gain a skill from that. And so I thought, okay, what can we do that is going to be beneficial for both the nonprofit organizations that we donate to and still teach the kids? So we built planter box benches. Basically, it's giving a community to an area that already is pretty limited on space. It's giving them an opportunity to have a space outside of that to just kind of relax and experience, while their lives might be not in a great place right now, it still gives a bit of normalcy. And so based on that lack of space as well, and building community, one trimester of my kids built raised planter boxes for gardening areas, because it again, gives an opportunity for that community to connect with where they're at and what they're doing, and give them a sense of normalcy in that. And then we built a bistro picnic tables, where it's just a two-person picnic table. And I was extremely happy with the way that my kids came together as a group for that, because I had two kids who were measuring and double checking that, two kids who were cutting, and then two kids who were grading the lumber, where they would look at the grain and look at, what's the best side, and get the project staged. And so that really came together well. And then teaching them clamping methods and reasoning for spacing and things like that. So there was a lot of opportunities that came with that. And the end project turned out really well. The organization that received the projects were super ecstatic. And so that was, I think, one of the coolest things. And then everything that I do in my class, when I teach them a skill on a machine or using a tool, I want them to be able to put that into play. So if I taught them how to use a drill press, then we'd go through the different types of drill bits, and then they would create candle holders with Forstner bits and nail guns and things like that. So it's just everything that they learned about, I want them to be able to apply.
And then to be able to give back, like you're saying, people who may not have an opportunity for a garden or a place to sit is really an incredible full circle moment for these students. So I don't think people will believe that these kids made these benches and stuff. It's pretty incredible.
Yeah, yeah. I had a pizza party for them because I just wanted them to have that reward for their efforts. And it was all three of my classes, and my classroom was full, so they spilled out onto the benches that they made in the hallway, and we're out there eating on
I
that. And
love
it was a
that.
really cool thing. Yeah. So I was like, hey, real world application right here.
You get to sit on the benches that you made.
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. Okay, so just to kind of finish off, I just have some really just kind of fun asked, I call them quick questions, so you can just give
Okay.
one word answers, just to kind of like lighten the mood here and finish us off on a fun note. First one is favorite teacher lunch.
I eat the same thing pretty much every day. So I would just say quick and easy charcuterie, cheese and meats kind of thing. It's just a
Perfect.
easy thing.
How about worst teacher lunch?
The baked potato bar, when the parent club does that, I hate baked potatoes. So I was
Oh,
like, oh man.
I love that. Okay, your best behavior management tip.
I think being real with the kids. I think that's the kids know exactly when I am upset with them. I don't try and sugarcoat anything, and it scares some kids, but at the same time, it also has the kids understanding the respect that I want from them. And so
Yeah,
that's the biggest thing I can say.
yeah. How would you explain your teaching in 3 words?
Oh boy, honest, funny, and I don't even know. I never even think about this. Yeah, I can't think of
That's
anything
good.
else.
Two is
But yeah,
fine. Two is
yeah.
fine. Last lesson you taught.
The last lesson I taught was a measurement lesson. Huge into fractions, reading a tape measure. And so, I always tell the kids, if there's no such thing as an even numerator, and so if you have put down an even numerator, we're going to discuss it, at length. And so yeah, that was the last lesson, where I just gave them a series of measurements from a 16th to an entire inch and back and forth and in any combination, and they had to process that on a block of wood.
Love it.
Yeah.
Okay, last question here is best advice from a teacher mentor when you were first starting out.
The best advice I think I ever got was to pay attention to what's being rolled out as new, because chances are you've seen it before in some form, and or you will over your years. And so when you see something, you'll be able to kind of apply what you've already learned from that or you've experienced, and apply it to this new thing. So it's not learning a whole new program, it's taking what you already know and applying it to this new system that's being rolled out.
That's actually full circle to this whole conversation because that's what you did, right? You took what you knew in social studies and moved to woodshop. So the whole thing is kind of what you're talking about right there, that last piece of advice.
Yeah, but this one was imposed by me rather than by the district,
True,
or and
true.
so when you're trying to process why the district is going in a certain direction or what they're doing, you're thinking, okay, hey, this is, brand new studies from the district, and I was like, this isn't brand new. We did this 20 years ago, and
Right? It
so
just comes
that's
back around.
exactly. And so yeah,
It's just a new acronym.
yeah, exactly. Yep, that's it.
Well, thank you so much, Joe, for taking time to share with teachers your advice and experience. It's going to be so helpful for so many people, and I really appreciate you taking the time to do this.
Absolutely.
Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.